Hey everybody, I'm Kathy Hester and welcome to my kitchen. I realized we haven't done like a lot of making recipes in a few months on these lives, so I wanted to do something super easy that you're going to use all the time. So we're going to make a dry bouillon. So a lot of times you'll get bouillon cubes and sometimes they have oil in them, sometimes they have, I don't know, like 90% salt in them. We're going to make one that's just made of flavors. So we're not going to use any oil. We're not going to use any salt. You could use salt if you prefer it. I prefer to add salt as I'm tasting a certain dish, like a soup or a stew, rather than making a bouillon have salt and then other ingredients have salt as well. So what I'd love for you guys to do is ask questions. So as you see me look this way, I'm looking to see if you have any questions. Tell me hello. Let me know where you're watching from and what's the weather like. I don't know if you can hear any of the street noise, but it's like almost 70 degrees today. It's crazy. Hi, Julie. Welcome, and thanks for joining me today. So this particular recipe is from my new book that comes out next month. And it's gluten-free vegan cooking in your Instant Pot. And one day I'll remember the whole name all by myself. But, and don't be scared off by the gluten-free part of it, because remember, all my cookbooks have gluten-free options. So you're going to find the same kind of recipes you're used to making from me. Hi, Imogene. Oh, Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. It's cold, but not too bad. Well, welcome. Even though it's been a little warm, I've heard it's supposed to get cooler again, because in North Carolina, this is not normal at all. And I've been making soups like crazy. So let me show you from the top camera. It's probably going to show you a few more details. This is just the picture from the book. And we're going to look at the dry vegetable bouillon. But really, we can make it any way we want. So even though I'm going to start off and make it kind of like that, then I'm going to tell you how to kind of go on and make it your own, because sometimes I'll make something like this that's much plainer, and sometimes if I know I'm going to use it for certain things, I might add some extra herbs or spices or chilies or who knows what all. But the base is going to be nutritional yeast, and that's I usually buy it by the pound because I use a lot of it. Another great place to get any of these spices, nutritional yeast or other things like this, is in a place that has bulk spices. Whole Foods used to. My Whole Foods doesn't have it as much anymore, but usually Co-ops do. Sprouts still has a Frontier. It's almost always Frontier Herbs, and that's why I just went ahead and bought this. I think this was somewhere between $10 and $12, and it'll take me at least a month and a half with some recipe development to go through all that. I usually just take it out of there and put it in my nifty nutritional yeast jar, which I love. So you could also just put it in like a little mason jar, just any way that you can keep it fresh and keep it clean. So I'm going to be doing this in a Ninja. We could also just mix it up in a big bowl, depending on how fine you want it. And I'm going to come back and I'll put under the description, I have links to a lot of these things in herbs and spice making equipment that I use on Amazon. This is something that's for a Ninja. Do not buy a Ninja just so you can use this, right? I wanted to try Ninja because it's a less expensive, powerful blender, so it's not $500 like a Vitamix or a Blendtec is. But this is an actual spice grinder attachment for the Ninja, and I use that a lot. So some of the things that we're going to choose from, and I've got things a little bit everywhere, is like I could use already ground black pepper, or I could use whole black peppercorns. That would change what I decided to use. If I was using black peppercorns, I certainly want to use a grinder. If I wasn't, I can either mix it up or depending on what size, these are the little jars that go with it. So I tend to try and put it in whatever size that I'm going to be using. It's not going to grind as fine as it's going to in a spice grinder. So you don't need to also buy a spice grinder. Go and look at your thrift store. You're going to find all kinds of coffee grinders that people decided they wanted to be fancy and grind their own coffee, and they got tired of it. To get the coffee smell out, or if you use your coffee grinder to make your fancy coffee, grind some white rice in it, and that helps take some of that flavor out. Grind your spices. Depending on the spices you grind in there, you may need to do a few rounds of white rice to kind of take some of that flavor out, and then you should be able to do coffee in it again. But I see them at the thrift stores all the time for like $4 to $6, like nice ones that usually cost $20, $30, $35, and so that's where I would go for that if you want one for spices. Okay, and tell me, do you guys have a spice grinder? I would love to know that. Or do you use a coffee grinder? Or do you just buy everything already ground? And that would be nice to know. So for this one, we're going to do just one batch of this. And I'm going to do this one in here. We're going to do about a half a cup of nutritional yeast. So if you're new to whole food plant-based cooking, you may not be as familiar with nutritional yeast. And I love this because this comes with a little 1/8 of a cup, so it's really easy for me to measure things out. Nutritional yeast is not the same thing as brewer's yeast, and you don't want to use brewer's yeast ever. It doesn't taste good. Also, you don't want to use any kind of active yeast because then it's going to foam up, and it's not made for this. So this is a non-active yeast, and if you smell it, it smells very savory, umami, almost cheesy, chicken brothy kind of smell to it. And this is what really brings the flavor punch to this dry bouillon powder. Hey, Miss Virginia. And Trina uses a spice grinder. And Sherry Masler uses a NutriBullet for spices. Excellent. That's a great thing to do. Maryland... oh, yay! It's Marilyn's first time on a live, and she signed up for my January online class bundle, and I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about that. And she's very excited. I'm very excited, too. I've got to tell you that. And one of the things we're going to do in the class is actually make some things like this. This is one of my favorite rice lentil mixes, and we're going to make things like this that you can use to make, kind of prep your meals to make Instant Pot meals later. I went into Williams-Sonoma one day and I saw that you can buy a jar half this size for like $15. So I was like, yeah, we can take care of that. So we're going to make soups and one-pot dishes and things like that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And you'll have food ready for later. Let's see who else. Natalie uses a coffee grinder. Emma Jean usually buys her spices ground. And Maryland uses a Cuisinart coffee grinder. That's excellent. Okay, so as people are joining in, what we're doing is we're making dry bouillon. And we're making it from my new book. And I'll leave a link about this as well. So the first thing we're putting in is nutritional yeast, which if you have done this for any length of time, you are not surprised. It is the basis of almost all bouillons if they're dry or not dry in cubes or whatever, as long as it is a vegan product. I know some people are having problems eating nutritional yeast. There are a few people that are allergic to it. And I wanted to talk about a couple of different things that you can use to add it in. This doesn't look as nice because I've made homemade tomato powder. And I'll show you in the overhead. And it gums up. So what I do when I make my spices and dry powders like this, I keep these little silica gels from Vitamins, and I just keep them and I stick it in here because I live in a very humid environment. So what this fancy stuff is, you can buy tomato powder. I just cut in half my cherry tomatoes because I am not a fan of cherry tomatoes, which I know is kind of weird, but I'm just not a fan. So whenever I get them in the CSA and things, I just cut them in half and I dehydrate them. And then once they're completely dry, I grind them like in a spice grinder. And you could do that with celery, with onions, garlic, because that's another thing. Garlic powder and onion powder is something I use a lot. And some people, when they first go plant-based, they feel like because it's a powder, it's probably something's wrong with it, right? It must be artificial. But you can make your own onion and garlic powder by literally thinly slicing or chopping up garlic and onion, put it in a dehydrator. And I don't have a fancy $1,000 dehydrator. I have one I inherited that you can buy at the thrift store for $10. I just have the little stackable plastic one, and it works fine. Just make sure it's completely dry and grind it, and then there you go. Okay, let's see. We've got some other questions. Mia uses a mortar and pestle because, of course, she does. She's sassy that way, my friend Mia. I find that I don't have the wrist power for that for some of the things that I do, but she is stronger than I am. And Sherry asked what book I'm cooking from, and Anita says hello, and I am cooking from Gluten-Free Vegan Cooking in Your Instant Pot, even though we're not using an Instant Pot today. Because any of you who have any of my books know I always have a staples chapter because I think staples are so important. And you can make things so cheap. And this is, so we need to probably move along with this a little bit. So if you can't have nutritional yeast, you could try doing tomato powder as a base. You could also, where did I put, okay. If you're doing a salt-free diet, you can't use this Trader Joe's Mushroom and Company seasoning. Let me let you look at that too from overhead. It is not ground super fine, and it has a few different things in there. See that? And it does have quite a bit of salt in it. I'm going to work on making a no-salt version. But those mushrooms, you know, that has that dark umami goodness that, like, if I add a little bit of the tomato powder or the mushroom powder or nutritional yeast to a soup or stew, it takes it from like here flavor-wise to way up here just by doing that alone. And so that's one other thing. If right now you don't have a bunch of different things to put in, if I'm making a stew, sometimes I will just throw nutritional yeast in instead of adding all the other things and maybe upping up some of the herbs. But for right now, we've got half a cup of nutritional yeast. We're going to put in about a tablespoon of dried parsley. And so when I go and I get spices in the bulk, this is usually what I'm looking at, something like this. I think I probably got this parsley at Aldi's. One thing to know, like at Aldi's, something like this, it's fine to get. It's usually inexpensive. But something like this, whenever I bought this Simply Organic turmeric a bazillion years ago, these spices that are in the glass bottles are usually marked up 1,000%. So let's hear that again, 1,000%. Okay, and here with turmeric is a good example. I get some of my spices at the Indian market, and this 7-ounce bag, which I will be using for a long time, of ground turmeric was $1.99, and I just bought that recently. Sometimes you'll see things like this for up to $8. If you have one, there's no shame. It's a great glass thing to refill, and that's what I do. But if you can, and if you have an Indian market near you, I really encourage you to go and check it out because it's so much fun, and you're going to find some inexpensive spices, and that's where you can get this black salt that happens to be pink, mind blown, that has kind of a high sulfur count. And if you're new to being plant-based this year, if you put a little bit of this in a tofu scramble or in a tofu salad, it makes it taste like eggs. So there is magic at the Indian grocery. So we'll talk more about that later. I'll try and make this ongoing spice theme this month. Yeah, and Anita's saying newest book, yes, and it comes out next month. And Imogene says it makes her cringe when she has to buy the glass bottle. I know, me too. I actually did of cumin yesterday at Sprouts. because I forgot I got a refill at the Indian market, but it was on sale. So it's kind of the same thing. If you ever, sometimes I've gone to do cooking classes and I've had to buy whole cashews to grind up. And it kills me to pay twice as much for whole raw, perfect cashews when I just want the pieces. And I get those a lot at the Indian market as well. So we're going to put about a tablespoon of dried parsley. If you have a garden, you certainly can just let it dry naturally or dry it in the dehydrator. And I'm going to put just a little more because it's just not green enough for me. Sometimes I just make random decisions like that, which is why I encourage you to make random decisions like that. Hi, Miss Jenny, welcome. And I'm going to do some thyme. So now, one of the things I tend to use a lot in bouillons, because you guys, also on plantbasedinstantpot.com, if you look up bouillon, I show you a way to make wet bouillon, a bouillon concentrate that you can then freeze. And I use fresh or dried thyme with that. Marjoram is another herb that I'm super fond of. So what you can always do is take these caps off, smell them, one, the other, smell them together, and they smell like happiness together. So instead of just using a teaspoon of each of those, a teaspoon of just thyme, I'm going to use like a teaspoon of each of them because I'm feeling it. And one of the things, I smell things a lot. Those of you who haven't seen me do this before, this is how I can tell. You can always taste it after you blend it together and adjust everything up. If you're doing that, I just add a little less. But as you smell, you know instinctively what smells good together and what doesn't. And so that's the first way that you can learn how to experiment with your own food and with my recipes and other people's recipes. Hi, Miss Lori. And Liz is watching too. Hi, Liz and Lori. They actually went to the Sick to Fit retreat with Howard Jacobson and Josh Lajani that I taught about some spice blends. And they're awesome. You guys are all awesome, though. We know that, right? Okay, so smells good. And if I decided, let's say I went, hey, I wonder if I want to put some mushroom powder in here. If it's not a yes, it's a no for me right now. So what it smells like to me is this smells fairly generic in that I could use it in chili. I could use it in chicken and dumplings. I could use it in a vegetable soup. This smells more specific, so I want to stay away from it for right now. We're going to use some celery seed. Now again, if we're talking about using a spice grinder or coffee grinder versus just kind of like a general blending apparatus, we could also, here we go, we could get ground celery seed. And I'll show you a little close-up of that too. Hi, Whitney. And it's exactly how she cooks. It's a good way to cook. So the celery seeds are little teeny tinies. So if you put those in a Vitamix, they are just not going to, I'm trying to get that to focus. Well, you can see they're teeny tiny. You don't need to know the details. So they're not going to grind up as nice this way. Oh, Whitney, it's your first time. Well, welcome. I'm glad you've joined us for a spice extravaganza. So I'm going to go ahead and, what did I say? I'm putting about a half a teaspoon of celery seeds is what it calls for. So that's going to be a little less than a half a teaspoon of ground. So do a little bit less than that. And actually, you can always smell it too, because spices and herbs lose some of their potency the older they are. So sometimes you have to make an adjustment, and you may add more or less. Typically, you're going to add more, honestly, because chances are greater that it's sat around for a little while longer than you've just ground fresh celery seeds and now you're using it. So we may up this a little bit. So my turmeric, I don't know if you guys can see, there's some in the very, very bottom. But I think we should just open up this big, yummy packet. Also, I've been finding in the Indian market that they've been having lots of organic spices, organic lentils and dals. They've been having organic rices and things too, which is pretty awesome. So I'm just going to put like a 1/4 teaspoon, here I'll use a real 1/4 teaspoon this time, of turmeric. And you know what? I've been sick lately, so I'm going to put a little extra. And mostly this turmeric, so this is going to be kind of like chickeny dry bouillon. So the nutritional yeast kind of does a double duty of having a chickeny flavor and adding cheesy flavor to things. And the turmeric is going to help turn that broth a little bit golden. And so you can always add more or less depending on how you'd like that to be. And then I'm going to put in some paprika. And paprika kind of gives it a little bit of color too. And Miss Brandy says there is nothing better than opening up fresh spices. And it's kind of true. Or even one of the cool things about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this and I'll have leftovers. So I'm going to fold it over really good, rubber band it, and put it in a Ziploc. And then I put it in another closed container. And I just keep that closed container of kind of, I call them backup spices. And then we're good to go. So with paprika, you always have a choice. People don't always tell you have a choice. There's smoked paprika and regular paprika. And there are things you're supposed to do with each of these. And I just throw that out the window and go, do I feel like I want a little smoky in my soups this week? And I will use smoked paprika. If you are not a fan of smoky flavors and smoked paprika is called for, you can always switch it out to paprika. Or if you are like me, Southern and full of all the smoky flavors you can hold, smoked paprika. Another great way of getting plant-based smokiness into your food is to use liquid smoke. Because again, another misunderstanding, kind of like the way some people think that onion powder is not okay. They think, oh, liquid smoke, that's all artificial. But what they do is they actually burn wood in a room and they catch the condensation. Now, that may or may not be okay within your dietary limitations, but it's delicious and it's not artificial flavors. Okay. Very good. And Julie's reminding me there's also hot paprika and sweet paprika, and that's true too. And the hot is, I bet you can guess what the hot is. Hot. So, do I follow my recipe? Do I not? Oh, the angst of it all. No. I say smoked paprika. I took a really long walk today, so I can have whatever I want in my bouillon. And it says a 1/4 teaspoon, and I'm going to up it to a 1/2 because I want a little extra smoky. And remember, we're going to taste this after we've blended it together so we can kind of fix it. We could also go ahead, so that's all the ingredients that's in this basic one that I did. And this is when we get crazy. So do we want to put do you find that you put a lot of bay leaves into what you're making next week? I always have ground bay leaf powder so that I can put it in mixes. I put it in my Cajun spice mix and a few other things. You can make it. It takes a pretty powerful spice blender to really do bay leaves well, I've found. So I do buy the powder. If we know that we're probably going to put garlic and onion in all the things we're going to do, we could up this with a little bit of those powders. What else did I bring us to talk about? There's roasted garlic powder you can get at Penzeys, and I like Penzeys spices. They are not the cheapest. Oh my God, you guys, if you could smell this. it's, if I smell that, and I really encourage you to smell your spices. And actually, Cheryl's here. So Cheryl, come on around. Yep, come on. Cheryl, come on down. She's usually my, the person I get to show things on because she doesn't cook as much as you guys do. Oh, and Lori said she missed the beginning. Okay, I am making a DIY dry bouillon that's whole food and plant-based. So what we have in here while she's coming around is we started with a base of nutritional yeast. We added in some celery seeds, some paprika, some turmeric. I'm thinking that may be it. Yeah, I think that's all we've added in so far. I could be wrong. But so this is regular garlic powder. This is roasted garlic powder. Come on, just a little bit. Come on, come on, come on. There you go. Wave at everybody. They're right there. There's Cheryl. Smell that one. Now smell this one. Smell that one. Now smell this one. It's kind of
really garlicky.
It's very garlicky. Thank you, Cheryl. Everybody give a hand. Cheryl doesn't like to be on camera, so I like to make her be on camera. And Virginia says, yay, hey, Cheryl. And Lori says, thanks. Okay, and so we're making just a basic, and then we're adding a little bit more. So I'm probably going to go ahead and put some of this roasted garlic in. I'm going to freehand it, so it'll probably be about a 1/4 teaspoon. And I almost did it again. And then usually I use half as much onion powder as I do garlic powder when I'm doing things, because it seems to just be stronger and come through the blends a little bit more. So that's just my preference. So we've upped this up a little bit. And normally, and actually when I get off this live, probably what I'm going to do is make a quadruple blend. But I want to get everything I want in there right first and then come back. So this is, do you hear Moxie? I don't know if you can hear her on the microphone. Oh, Natalie. Natalie says, hi, Cheryl, and woo! You guys are awesome with your energy. Okay, this could be loud. This doesn't make a whole lot. And Max hates this blender, so he may be unhappy. This is a background. Wow, it's loud. It's loud. Okay, because I love you guys, I'm going to stop with that now. When I get off of here, there's going to be more. Cheryl was like, where's Max? And I was like, oh, I forgot. I put him in the bedroom while I was doing this because I have the side door open. So in her mind, if the side door is open, Max has somehow escaped into the world. Like he's brave enough to do that. Okay, so why would I even blend it longer? And let's see if I can get this little bit around the bottom to kind of show you. What happens is it gets, that looks pretty good. It's just smaller. The particles themselves are tinier. And with that happening, it incorporates in your liquids like soups and stews, and it gets more evenly distributed. And that's one of the reasons I like to make my own spice blends, and I tend to grind them over just kind of mixing my Italian seasoning together. But I do that a lot because I'm lazy. But it's even better if I make the Italian seasoning, I grind it into a powder and use it, because then even in a pasta sauce, the flavor is going to be more uniform throughout the entire portion or pot or Instant Pot, whatever I'm making it in. Do you guys have any questions about some of these things that we talked about? So I'm going to come back and put up a link about where you can get some of these things and where I get some of the spices from Amazon in case you don't have these places near you. With this, I do order this from Amazon, and you can get it on like that subscribe and save a little bit of money. I get spices all over the place too, so if you want to experiment and smell and taste a lot of spices, if you have a place like Savory Spice Shop or Penzeys near you, I would really encourage you to kind of have a smelling outing. And just kind of like they have blends and different things, and you can try some of those. So they have, Savory Spice Shop has a lot of different sausage blends. So, and if you're not eating meat, it'll creep you out a little bit to read. It's like venison sausage or pork barrel sausage or these things, but it's just different spice blends. That's it. So then you can take your lentil, rice, maple, applesauce and put those in there and make your own patties, which is pretty amazing. And Brandy says, what's this bay leaf powder that you're speaking of? It's truly just bay leaves that have been ground into a powder. Very, very similar to onion powder or tomato powder, any of the other powders that we're talking about. And I'll try and make some myself and see how that works. I bought this at a place you can't buy it anymore because this was before I had the spice grinder and I was making Cajun seasoning, and grinding spice leaves is very difficult in just a regular non-spice grinder. I found it very difficult. And with this, as I'm smelling it too, that's when you go, ooh, it's just... Here, we'll let Cheryl smell it and see what Cheryl thinks. And it's special guest Cheryl!
Well, that smells nice.
Yeah, you smell just the hint of smoke in there. Mm-hmm. And there's just enough garlic and onion that Cheryl didn't go, ooh, that smells garlicky, right? Because what I'm wanting this to do is just add and layer and enhance the flavors and not overpower it. So I want this to be like a bouillon cube, what I hope a bouillon cube is going to be, which it never is. It's always too salty, and it always has one thing that stands out more than the other that doesn't quite make me happy. This costs pennies compared to how much that stuff costs. Better Than Bouillon is very expensive now for just a little jar. And again, you can make a bouillon, a wet bouillon, from my recipe on Plant-Based Instant Pot. And maybe I'll make another one of those. I haven't made that in a while. Any questions at all about any of this stuff? Don't forget, and I'll put this down and I'll put it in the description too, I guess up is what it's going to be when it gets into Facebook. I'm having 2 classes, so my January class bundle is on sale for $50. The classes are usually $35 each. The first class, which is on Saturday, we're going to make these layered meals that we're going to prep for our Instant Pot, and we'll make a few of them as well. So that way you can have meals planned where you have to do very little work later on, and you can just throw it in and make dinner in the evening. The second class this month is going to be another Instant Pot bean class, and we're going to make from the new book, From Gluten-Free Vegan Cooking in Your Instant Pot. We're going to make the baked beans, and they are crazy good. I'm going to see if I can find a picture because I'm looking for it now. You liked those, didn't you? Okay. Have you guys ever noticed when you look for something you can't find it, or is it just me? Just me? Aha! They're just so good. Like, look at that. Yummy. So we're going to make those in the class, and those are phenomenal. And Lori's asking, I've never seen a recipe use bay leaf powder. How would you use it? Typically, in anything that you would not want to put a whole bay leaf in and pull it back out. So I use that bay leaf powder when I am making spice blends, because it's hard for me to blend the bay leaf, because you have to take the whole bay leaf out because you can cut yourself on it, and that's one of the reasons. Even I try not to put bay leaf powder in recipes because it is a little obscure. So it just depends on if you're going to become a big spice geek like me, which I bet you are. But if not, then you don't have to bother with it.
Can you show them your drawer?
Well, it's kind of hard to see. Well, this.
I'm trying to see it.
Okay, this is my main drawer of spices. And then I have 2 backup bins in the pantry. So I have a lot of spices. I have a whole bin of Indian spices. I have a bunch of dried chilies and different things like that. So I'm obsessed with them, and I like making my own blends, especially because when people have dietary limitations, you have to be careful what's in there. But never feel like you have to buy something obscure. And if you see something that's my recipe, or you have one of my books, or you're looking at plantbasedinstantpot.com or healthyslowcooking.com, you can always come on and say, hey, Kathy, do I really have to have smoked cardamom? And I will probably say, no, you can use some liquid smoke and regular cardamom. Is it, a one-to-one thing? No, it's going to be slightly different. But sometimes it's what you can have for dinner is more important and trumps having something, a little fancier. Any other questions? I think that I talked about classes. Oh, I almost forgot. Don't forget, if you're not in my 5-day Instant Pot email challenge, please sign up for that. Wherever you're watching this, you will find it. It's free. And basically the first day you don't get a recipe, but you get some information. Then day 1 really starts, and every day you'll get a video and a recipe to make, and you can email me back with your questions. And I would love for you guys to take that, because it's my goal to get everybody to take their Instant Pots out of the box this year. No more dusty Instant Pots. Let's get them used.
I even used it this year.
Oh, that's true. Cheryl made a vegan lasagna in the Instant. Yes, she did. Oh, can you hear Cheryl when she's talking? Because she went in the Instant Pot. So she's very happy. So Anita says you least share the. I think that autocorrect is a bandit on your phone or something right now. But if you tell me again, I'll be happy to answer. You say later. Please share the name of the new book in the notes. I will. It's Gluten-Free Vegan Cooking in Your Instant Pot, and I will put a link to the book. You can pre-order it now on Amazon. And then Sherry says she has every spice and herb available. She has 3 cabinets devoted to spices. In the summer, she grows 70 different herbs. Sherry, do you live near North Carolina?
It sounds like a field trip.
I know. I think we need to have a field trip to your garden, because that sounds amazing. And Brandy is proud of you for making a lasagna. Okay, lovelies. I will put all that information up probably in about 15 or so-ish minutes. And if you have some other questions, just leave them below. I will answer them or give you a link if you're looking for something in particular, okay? And have a wonderful day. And thank you so much for joining me in the kitchen.